Greetings once again from Cooperstown, New York, and welcome to the latest in our series of online programs from the National Baseball Hall of Fame and Museum. Very glad to be with you today. My name is Bruce Markison. I work in the education department. Today we're going to introduce a new program. It's going to be the first in a series that we'll have throughout the rest of the summer. Also heading into the fall, it's called Ask the Expert, Maintaining and Conserving Your Collection. Joining us is a longtime Hall of Fame employee, now the Director of Collections for the Hall of Fame and Museum, Sue McKay. Sue, welcome to the program. How have you been?
I've been well, Bruce. Thanks for having me. We're going to have a good time today and throughout the fall as well.
Sue, for those who don't know you, tell us a little bit about your background, when you started here at the Hall of Fame. I think it was a little bit before I did. I started in '95, and I think you'd been here a little bit. But tell us just a little bit about how you got your start here in Cooperstown.
Well, I started in May of 1994. There was a job opening for a associate registrar here at the Hall. And I really just stumbled upon the ad. It was in a museum ad publication. I was working at Hartwood College in Oneonta, New York as the registrar down there, and wasn't really looking for a position. I was very happy at the college with all the students, but I ran across this ad and I thought, oh my, I love baseball. It was in the place of my birth. I was born here in Cooperstown. And I thought, wow, what a wonderful job that would be. So I applied with 300 other people and was fortunate enough to get the job. Been here for 26 years and I've loved every minute of it.
It's interesting how the terminology changes. You mentioned that you were the associate registrar, and I guess the head registrar back then would be the equivalent to what you're doing now.
Right. So basically the associate registrar was his helper, and then I moved to full registrar. And then when my boss retired after 40 years of being at the Hall, then I took on those responsibilities and became Director of Collections in 2009. So it's been a nice journey up through the ranks in the same department, and it's been great because I've been able to learn all aspects of the position.
Very good. Well, we're going to talk about kind of some general principles for how people can maintain their baseball-related collections. And of course, there's a lot of different elements to that. Some people focus on baseball cards. Other people focus on more three-dimensional artifacts, or they may have a mix of different kinds of items. We want to give a general overview, and then we can get into some specific questions when people join us in the chat room a little bit later on in our program. So we talk about the three-dimensional collections here at the Hall of Fame. Could you explain that just a little bit, Sue? When I'm talking three-dimensional, I mean, I guess somebody could make an argument that a piece of paper is sort of three-dimensional, but you're not dealing with paper. You're dealing with items a little bit different than that.
Right. The library has its own collection of all of the paper material. And so everything from tickets to baseball cards to photographs, contracts, programs, anything paper that you can think of is a part of that library collection in that division. The 3D collection really encompasses the larger items, the three-dimensional items, so any type of equipment from on the field that players are using, or things in people's homes, jewelry. You know, people collect a lot of different kinds of baseball artifacts. So really it's the three-dimensional items that I'm responsible for, which is a hefty part of the collection. There's over 40,000 objects in that collection, encompassing a lot of different types of artifacts.
40,000 objects. That sounds daunting to me.
It's a big number, and it takes a lot of people to kind of keep an eye on everything. Not only are we responsible for the things in our storage collection, but also everything that's out on the floor encompasses that job, is maintaining and ensuring that these pieces last forever, because there's going to be generations of folks coming way after us, Bruce, that will visit the hall and learn from the history of these pieces. So we're just a little piece of the pie here in terms of maintaining these collections in perpetuity.
In this PowerPoint that you put together for us, you list some of the different kinds of objects, textiles like pennants, jerseys, baseball caps. You've got gloves, baseball, shoes, bats, trophies. One item kind of jumps out at me, ceramic collectibles. What would be an example of that?
Well, believe it or not, we've got some kind of fun pieces that are made of ceramics in the collection. In the early days, when we first opened the doors, we accepted everything that walked in. And so people would make these ceramic ashtrays in their ceramics classes, and in the shape of a baseball mitt or a bat. And we collected those items. And so we've got, little ceramic ashtrays in the collection, little figures that people have produced over the years. And also, there's artwork as well that is ceramic in nature. So it's an eclectic collection. If it's baseball related, we probably have something that would encompass the game.
You mentioned artwork. In addition to ceramic artwork, we've got paintings, we've got sculptures. Some of those are on display in the art gallery on the first floor here at the museum, but also many items that are in storage not far from where your office is.
Yeah, that's correct. We try to rotate pieces on and off exhibit, so folks that like to return can see new pieces, along with the new accessions that come in as well. We like to get those out as well. So we're constantly rotating pieces. We're assessing pieces to look at their condition. And we're really the caretakers and keepers of all of these pieces.
Now, the second paragraph here is kind of the mission statement for what you and what the Hall of Fame wants to do, preserving the collection by adhering to professional museum standards. And I imagine some people might say, well, who exactly establishes those standards? Are they national standards? Do museums vary from institution to institution? How does that work?
Well, that's the really wonderful thing about museum work, is that if you have a museum job, you can walk into any museum in the world and speak the same language, so to speak. The standards are the same in terms of how you handle these objects, how you catalog them, how you conserve them. You have to record the holdings, you have to document them, and then there's the whole study and research portion that our curators do on a daily basis. And then you have to get all of the information together for them to then go out on exhibit or to have a photograph published to be put in a publication. So it's really all of the background work on these pieces that we do before the public sees them.
Sue, is it sometimes a little tricky with older artifacts that may have been acquired very early in the Hall of Fame's history? Maybe they didn't have the same kind of record keeping back then. Is it sometimes hard to find information on some of these items?
It is. In the early days, when those little ceramic ashtrays walked through the door and some of the other things, a lot of toys and games and collectibles, there was next to no information coming in with them. We would have a donor name, but we wouldn't know where the person obtained the piece, if they made it, if they bought it, if it was handed down in their family. There's a lot of kind of missing information, and that's true throughout the whole museum world. In the early days, museums weren't pinpointing every single detail about pieces. And so that's one of the challenges, is to try to fill in the blanks And that's where the internet has been so wonderful, is that you can do research. And folks tuning in today can do their own research on their own collectibles just by diving in, jumping in, and seeing what's out there that other people have posted.
Now we can look at these artifacts, and you can do research to try to find out more information about them, especially the ones that were acquired early in the history of the Hall of Fame. We can also use an artifact to kind of determine if it's authentic, matching it up to film and video and maybe written records. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, that's key here at the Hall, and really in any museum, once again, because when you put something out on exhibit, it needs to be vetted before it goes out, because folks need to know that what they're seeing is authentic. Because there are a lot of fakes out there, a lot of copies. Certain collectibles lend themselves to that, particularly autographed baseballs. You have to be very, very careful with anything signed, really. So we have to do the research first. And that's done in the collections department and the curatorial department as well. So we work very closely with them. The curators vet these pieces by viewing footage and photographs that may lend some information. They look at marks on a bat or folds in a glove based on photographic evidence, video evidence. Every little nuance is examined to make sure that the pieces that we have here match up with an event where the piece came from, or just research in general that's out there.
Sue, the final bullet point on this screen has to do with acquisition and insurance of artifacts. Let's talk about acquisition, something we always emphasize. The Hall of Fame doesn't purchase items. The only exception was the first item we ever got, which was the famed Doubleday baseball, which I believe was purchased for $5 by Mr. Clark back in the 1930s.
Right.
But other than that, no money exchanges hands.
That's correct. We accept items into the collection by donation only. There are 2 acquisitions committees that review potential donations. So the library has their own committee, and they review all of the paper material. And the 3D portion has their own committee that studies those acquisitions that come in. So the committees get together. The library meets much more frequently because they have a lot more items coming in. So they usually meet once a week, whereas the 3D committee usually meets once a month. We sit down at a table, and everyone brings something to the table. And we encourage folks to send images of the pieces instead of the pieces themselves. So we study these images and any accompanying information that the potential donor gives us. Sometimes there's wonderful stories of pieces that have been in the collection for decades. And those folks have kept good records and pass along information to us. Sometimes there isn't a lot of history. A person either purchased an item not knowing the history, it wasn't passed along to them, or it was passed down in the family, but people didn't keep the records. So everything is unique. Everything has a story, which is what we're after. Everything that's been collected has a background story, and we want to tell that story to our visitors. So the acquisition is very important, that portion of bringing those pieces in. A lot of thought and effort goes into that process.
Sue, are there circumstances under which you would take an item as a loan, let's say for a year or 2?
There is. We have a few loans up on the exhibit floor, and we usually accept a loan that would fill a gap in the exhibition program. So something like the famous glove that Willie Mays used in his over-the-shoulder catch is actually a loan to us. It's been a long-term loan for many years. things like that, that's going to portray a really important moment in time, we would take as a loan. And folks are welcome to contact me about things in their collection, whether it be a loan or a donation. And I'm happy to kind of talk it through with them, because many times folks don't know what to do or where to go.
Right.
They have a piece that's been passed down in their family, but they don't know what to do from there. So I very much enjoy speaking with folks and guiding them through the process of what to do next.
Let's talk for a moment about insuring these artifacts. I mean, some of these are priceless items in terms of what they represent in baseball history. How do you go about insuring them?
Well, again, everything is unique. It has its own story and uniqueness. A lot of things can be a one of a kind, like Willie Mays glove, or a lot of items that we have in the collection. So what you do is, in terms of the insurance, you do research and see what's out there currently. So I'm on the internet a lot, looking at anything that might be somewhat similar. There are places that you can go online to see things that have sold over time and see what the values have been for those pieces. But it's important that everything is insured. In the building, we have a wall-to-wall coverage for everything, whether it's on loan or it's donated here. Everything is covered in the case of something happening.
So do you submit a proposed number, or does somebody else do that?
We value things here for our own purposes, and it's really not really a market value, but it's a price that we put on items. If someone's loaning a piece, then we would ask them to value their items, to give us a number that they feel comfortable with and that we feel comfortable with as well, to insure the pieces. But part of my job is doing a quarterly report to our insurance company with all of the new acquisitions that have come in over the 3-month period, along with a value placed on those. And then those get added to our insurance policy.
Let's talk about where we store all of these items. 40,000. There's no way in the world that any museum can showcase every artifact or piece that it has. The numbers I hear for the Hall of Fame, that we usually at any one time have about 10 to 12% of our artifacts of those 40,000 that are in exhibits at any one time. And so the rest have to go into our storage facility. We see some photos here. Tell us about this part of the complex, which most people don't see, and how exactly it works.
So this is a climate-controlled area, a very high security area where portions of the collection are stored that are not currently out on exhibit. You mentioned the 10 to 12% on exhibit. That's actually a high number. Most museums are below that number in terms of what's in storage. So we try to certainly get things out on exhibit in a timely manner, especially if there's been something that's happened on the field. We've been known to turn around something in a day. And remember, we have to go through the whole process of numbering the item, photographing it, doing the research. But we want to get it out there so folks can see it, because they've seen it on their televisions a day or two before. And when they come to visit, that's what they're looking for. And that's certainly what we want to provide. So we'd like to get things out as soon as possible. But there's other things that would fit into an exhibit a few years down the line. If we're planning for future exhibits, we would know, well, it's not going to go out right away, but there's potential for that to go out later. So, that's why we would be collecting it. We also loan things to other institutions as well. So I'm always getting proposals from other museums asking what we have on particular players, and I provide them with lists, and then they think about what they want to show in their own museum. So it's a back and forth, and that's what makes it fun, is that it's not just about Cooperstown, but it's really, any place in the world can contact us, And if they fit our criteria, they can show something from Cooperstown. So
See,
what we're
I would enjoy that job because I would tell them all no, but you're a lot nicer. And I'm sure you say yes quite a bit.
Yes, as I say, we've got a 30-page document. They need to, it's really a questionnaire. They need to complete that 30-page document, and that reviews everything about their facility, everything from security to insurance to their maintenance, everything about their building, their staff, other loans that they've done to other institutions. It's quite a comprehensive document. So we only loan things to folks that we feel comfortable with after reviewing that document and speaking with them as well.
Now, in two of the photographs here, Sue, we see on the left side of the picture these very large, kind of horizontally shaped boxes, or they're kind of horizontally laid. What exactly is in those boxes?
Those are all uniforms, and we have them organized by alphabetically by last name of player. So there will be everybody from Hall of Famers to non-Hall of Famers. Ty Cobb's there, Babe Ruth is there, but there's also folks that aren't in the Hall of Fame as well. Those pieces tell a story, and we even have uniforms from folks that have played in industrial leagues, or if relatives have been in the Navy and they played on a naval baseball team or Army baseball team, or something has come in from the war years. It doesn't have to be about, a famous player. It can be, granddad's uniform that he played, while he was playing industrial ball. So we cover all aspects of baseball. It isn't just about what's on the field. It's all encompassing, and it's about baseball all over the world.
So all of these pieces of clothing, these uniforms, these jerseys, they're all in boxes. You don't ever use hangers of any kind.
Correct. We don't. We lay them flat because that way there's no stress on any point in the textile. If you put something on a hanger, it's going to hang, and over time it will make permanent marks in that fabric. So we suggest laying them flat and putting them in these acid-free boxes, which is essential, because regular cardboard is very acidic, and over time that acid will come out. So there are wonderful items that you can purchase called acid-free boxes. There's acid-free pens, there's all kinds of acid-free material, tissue that we wrap those textiles in, but it puts the least amount of stress on the piece, and that's what you want no matter what it is.
Now, the large photograph on the right, we've talked about the boxes on the left side. On the right side appear to be these large cabinets of some kind with handles. Tell us about those.
Those are movable storage units used very often in libraries who shelve their books that way, and also museums who shelve their objects that way. They turn very easily. You can turn a number of them at once, or you can just do them individually, but you are able to store a larger number of pieces in these types of units versus just static shelving that doesn't move. And so, we need to be very creative in our storage area. We need to be able to store the maximum amount of pieces in the space we have. So those have been very, very useful, and we've filled them up quite a bit.
So because they're movable, you can create more space for more items. I guess the one, well, I wouldn't call it a downside to it, but if someone is at the far end in between two of the shelves, they better let people know that they're there because they might get crunched.
Exactly. We give a shout, and that's why we have a board on our door that you would sign in to make sure people know you're in there,
Yeah.
so that you don't get scrunched between them. But as you said, it's not a public space, so it's the staff, the collection staff working in there and doing what we need to do, whether it's putting new items on the shelf or taking pieces off of the shelving so that they can then go out on loan, that they can go up on the exhibit floor, or they can go to a conservation lab for some work to be done.
So what about the photograph in the lower left? Those look like shelves with paintings, I believe. Are those are those movable as well?
They are. Those are art racks. And so they're actually in a grid, so you can hang different size artwork on them and really organize them however you want. We have them organized by the year that they came into the museum. So our oldest items are against the left wall, and then the pieces travel chronologically to the last pieces that we've taken into the museum. But there's a lot of different mediums that are stored there. There's watercolors, acrylics, oils, different depictions. Of course, there are a lot of sports artists that paint, but there's also a lot of fans that do things as well. So there's framed cartoons, there's framed textiles, needlepoint pieces, hooked rugs. It's really a mixed bag, but it's fascinating to kind of go through and look. And we were thrilled to be able to put items up on exhibit in the art gallery, because folks aren't necessarily expecting to see an art gallery when they walk into the Hall of Fame. But to showcase all of the art that we've accepted over time is just a real thrill, and I think people really enjoy it.
Very nice. Let's talk about some of the storage guidelines that are used. It's not just a question of putting these items in boxes and on the shelves, but there's a lot of concern about the weather in that particular room. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, the room is climate controlled, so there's a temperature and humidity that are maintained at all times. We have a central computer that maintains these conditions. So ideally, temperature would want to be between 65 and 70 degrees, and relative humidity would want to be between 40 and 50%. And that's kind of an all-encompassing set of parameters, because we have a lot of different things, types of material stored in one room. You can certainly do microclimates, because the silk would need a different parameter than, let's say, wood or leather. But this is a nice, really, the parameters are very all-encompassing. So everything does well at these settings, which is why we chose them for the room. Now we have things boxed. Everything is boxed so that dust isn't a factor for these pieces. The lights are off unless someone is in the room. Pest control, we're always looking for little critters, and there's a whole pest management system that we adhere to. Air circulation is very important, because everything needs to breathe, particularly leather items. So baseball, gloves, anything leather needs to breathe. And these acid-free boxes are breathable. So even though the pieces are inside the box, air is able to go through the box. And that's exactly what you need.
Looking at some of the numbers here, most people that live in a house, if they have a basement or they have an attic, those rooms usually have temperature extremes. Basements tend to be really cold, especially in the winter. Attics this time of year, broiling. So unless you can control temperature and humidity in those rooms, do we rule out basements and attics?
We rule out basements, attics, and garages as well, because the fluctuation in temperature and humidity is just too extreme. And that's really what does the damage, because these pieces, as I mentioned, have to breathe. And if they're undergoing these huge extremes, you see a little picture there of a piece of wood that is cracked. Uh, Wood can't take these big extremes. Textiles can't either. Gloves, if something's too dry, it's going to get brittle and it's going to dry out. If it's too moist in an environment, then you'll see mold growth. And both of those extremes are very bad because damage is happening. And then it's very costly to try to repair the damage. So best to maintain as much as you can in your home environment, this consistent temperature and humidity. That pays off in the long run.
How do people control humidity? Is it as simple as a dehumidifier, or is there something more intricate than that?
Dehumidifiers do a great job in trying to maintain a particular humidity. And there are little monitors that you can buy that will tell you what the humidity is in your home so that you can watch it over time. And I tell folks to just watch these things over a year's period because the seasons change, the temperatures change, the humidity change. You can try to stabilize these as much as you can, but you've got to look at what you're doing in your space, and you've got to know the information. So these little monitors can let you know the information about what you might need to do. If you have a humidifier and that's doing damage, take it out and put in a dehumidifier. Watch your gauges, your temperature gauges, to see what you've got. If your air conditioner is maybe making things too cold, you'll know that too. So getting some sort of monitoring system is important.
Let's talk a little bit about light, because I think that's a factor that sometimes gets overlooked. If you've got a room, most rooms have windows, you're storing things in that room, what kinds of drapes? Is there a particular kind of drape you want to have over the windows to limit the light?
Well, all light is bad, no matter what it is. If it's coming in through the window, natural daylight, incandescent, fluorescent, any type of light is bad and is going to fade, whatever you have, whether it be paper or three-dimensional. And I think we've all seen light damage in some way, shape, or form on things that we own in our own personal houses. So if you have some sort of window, I always recommend not having anything stored near a window because it can be costly to black out that window. There's blackout drapes, there's shades you can buy, but really just much easier and cheaper to have things away from the window so that that light isn't beating on them all the time.
And then the final point on this screen, air circulation. And we've been hearing a lot about that with the current COVID-19 situation, about how malls need to have a certain degree of air circulation. What can people do within their own homes?
Yeah, well, certainly stagnant air isn't a good thing because you've got to keep air moving. Just as you do for people, you really need to do that for objects as well. So again, in people's personal spaces, a fan might be a good thing to put in, just a little, table fan. Again, but you have to know what your temperature and humidity is first before you then go from there and start either buying humidifiers, dehumidifiers, fans. Once you know what you have and what your parameters are, then you can search for things to fix problems or just circulate that air.
Let's talk a little bit about handling guidelines. These items that you are going to handle from time to time, you do want to limit that, but there are times when you're going to show them to guests, to friends. You may rearrange how they're displayed in a room. So here we've got some real common sense items. No smoking, eating, or drinking. that doesn't mean you can't ever eat or drink. You have to do that, but you just shouldn't eat or drink in your display room.
Exactly. You don't want to introduce anything that might be a potential hazard, because we've all, knocked over something, or crumbs fall from things we're eating. If it's not there, you don't have to worry about it. So do your eating in the kitchen or the dining room, but don't have that near your objects, because accidents can happen, and better, again, not to have to worry about it at all.
I would think smoking would be especially dangerous for the items just because of how long smoke would linger in a room.
Linger, right, and it leaves a film over time. Tobacco can be a very stressful thing for objects. Sometimes you can see the smoke in the air, but other times you can't, and it'll just drift around and then settle on whatever is out. So, certainly that comes to mind. We received a ball from the World Trade Center rubble, and to this day, that ball still has the smell of smoke in it. It just became so permeated. So smoke can be very, very detrimental.
Emphasis on clean hands and gloves. Specifically, what kind of gloves?
We use white cotton gloves. We also use nitrile gloves as well. Those are the blue surgical looking gloves. But the whole point is to cover the hands, because we have a lot of finger oil that we're not even aware of.
Yeah.
But those oils are on our fingers, and then the minute we touch something, boom, it imprints on the piece. You might not see it for a while, but over time, you will see a fingerprint, let's say on a leather baseball or a glove. Those come out. So best, again, not to worry about that. Just clean your hands, put the gloves on, and also, avoid wearing any jewelry or objects that can snag a piece, because, again, if we've got necklaces especially, or bracelets, it's easy to lean over something or reach for something, and snags can happen, particularly in textiles. But these type of objects also can leave their marks in leather pieces. So best to not even wear them. You don't have to worry about it.
Yeah. How about structurally weak areas? You talking about walls that might not support a shelf?
No, actually, what we're talking about there are the pieces themselves. Let's say the gloves.
Oh, okay.
You need to look at what your piece is. Look very closely and look for loose, let's say on a glove, any loose rawhide around the perimeter, if there's any tears, if there's loose buttons on the wrist straps, or any leather that's been compromised over time. You need to be very delicate in handling anything that you have in your own collections. And that's where it's also so important to check in on all of your pieces that you have. Instead of kind of just putting it away and locking it up and not seeing it, take it out once in a while and really examine it and look at everything. And if you have to get your magnifying glass out, it can tell you a lot about what's happening in your environment that you've got, or just what's happening, what's happened over time, maybe before you got the piece. But it's very important to keep an eye on everything that you have.
On your final bullet point here, you talk about labeling and photographing items. With labeling, I'm guessing one example might be, let's say you have an album of baseball cards, maybe putting something, an identification on the outside of the album saying, well, this is Topps 1968, or, these are all Ken Griffey cards, that sort of thing?
Yes, there's, along with acid-free boxes, there's also acid-free tags that are available for purchase. And you can write on the tags, we write in pencil, and you can tag your pieces. So gloves, shoes, anything that you can tag. For textiles, we actually sew on some acid-free twill tape, and write on that twill tape and then sew it into the textile. You always want to make sure that whatever number you're giving something is removable. So you never want to just write something in pen or, put something on a piece that's permanent. Because that, again, can cause damage over time. So you need to be very careful about how you label, but there's wonderful pieces that are available for labeling purposes. And also photographing the items as well. That's key for a number of different reasons. It's nice to have the photograph put on the outside of the box so you don't have to go into the box to see what it is. But also for insurance purposes at home. You might want to be adding some things onto your policy, and to have a photographic record of the pieces that you own is a very good idea.
Excellent advice. And that sort of leads into our final screen here, documentation. This is something a lot of people don't necessarily think about, and they're certainly not going to be as detailed as you are in the collections department here at the Hall of Fame, but having some kind of a cataloging system can be very helpful.
It's most helpful for the relatives down the line that you may be passing your items along to. It can be very helpful if you're going to sell an item, let's say, down the line. You may have bought something for an investment piece, but you want to move it on along to someone else, another collector. If you catalog those pieces, that's everything. That's the history about the piece since you've had it, and how grateful would your relatives be to have that information. Because a lot of times information gets passed down verbally, and sometimes that can change over time in a family. So if the person that has a piece that they want to pass along, if they can write down their thoughts and memories, that can stay with the piece and travel along with it for countless generations to come. So I'm pretty adamant about that, because it's just so important to know what you have and let other people know as well. And the photography portion is important as well for those reasons, but also to see if the piece has changed condition over time. When you first got it, photograph it right away, and then take photographs from time to time to see if the piece is yellowing or fading, or if something's happening to it. You can document all of that as well.
Now, on the right side, we see a group of words. Are these the names of the different categories of artifacts?
They are. So we have things stored by division. So these are all of the divisions of the collection that we have. So all of our baseballs are stored together, all of our bats are stored together, and we number every item. Just as a library book has a call number on its spine, every three-dimensional piece has a number attached to it, and that stays with the piece forever. And that's how we track it in our computer database. We can just plug in that number and boom, the screen will come up with the full documentation of the piece along with the photograph as well. And it's a very easy way to find things, to keep track of things, especially if items are moving in and out. Certainly for us, things are going on exhibit, they're coming off exhibit, they might leave the building. So it's a very easy way for tracking purposes.
Lots of excellent information coming from Sue McKay, our Director of Collections. We'd like to take your questions now, and you can do that right in our Zoom group chat room, our chat box as we like to call it. Just type your question in. Sue will do her best to answer. We did get some questions ahead of time, particularly from some younger fans, and they're always fun. Let's deal with a couple of those. We have a question from Jeff. He wants to know, what is the best way to remove tape or gum stains from a baseball card?
Yeah, with paper is very, very delicate, and things of that nature, the gum or the residue has actually permeated the top layer of the paper. So it's really best to send those items to a paper conservator, because any type of work that might be done at home, let's say trying to erase pencil marks or pen marks, or removing old cellophane tape that's been on cards, or the push pin marks, anything that you would try to do at home can really lead to a disaster. So it's best to let the professionals do their work. They've got the background. They've spent years amassing information about how to work on these pieces, the right chemicals to use, the right tools to use. And so it's best to leave that type of work to the experts.
We have a question from Pete. He wants to know, when getting a baseball signed, what should you have the person sign it with? A pen, a marker, something else?
It's best to provide a pen to the folks that are going to sign the ball, because sometimes folks can just grab any old pen, and that's not a good idea, because there is a difference. So the best pen to use is called a Pigma pen, Pigma, and that's available in any art supply store or some of the big box stores as well. A Pigma pen is our archival quality pen, waterproof, fade resistant, and they come in different size line widths, which is nice because some people have a preference of whether they want a very fine line or a thick line in a signature. It also makes it more readable as well if you have a thicker line, although it really depends on the person's signature and how neat they are in utilizing the pen. But if you can help them along by giving them a good pen, it makes a world of difference, because other pens will fade over time. I've seen things signed with big pens that basically the signatures are gone.
Yeah.
Sharpies, old Sharpies, they fade very fast. The pen makes a big difference.
Are these Pigment pens good on bats as well?
Yes, they are actually. And on any hard surface, you just need to be careful that you don't handle that autograph. You need to let it set over an amount of time, because you don't want any smearing of an autograph to occur. But it will kind of set in over time and be fine.
Sue, this is probably my favorite question that's come in from young Stevie. Did you go to college for artifacts?
Actually, yes. So my undergrad, I received a history degree, and I knew I liked objects, but I wasn't quite sure what to do. So I started doing some research about what kind of jobs were out there in the world, and the museum field just seemed like a perfect match for me, because I loved objects. I like to collect things myself and organize them and do the research on them. And so I thought, my goodness, wouldn't that be fun to do that for a living?
Yeah.
So I found a graduate program in History Museum Studies and received a master's in that for museum work, and it was just the perfect match to be able to work with artifacts of any kind. And it doesn't have to be baseball. It can be in any museum in the world, and that's the beautiful thing about it. If you like archaeology, if you like, any type of different type of object, the same rules apply.
Yeah. When you went to the Museum Studies School, they use the term artifacts, right? That is the accepted terminology.
Yes, that is the accepted terminology. And it can give you the skills to work with any type of objects. People in my class are working in military museums, or maritime museums, or it runs the gamut. Some folks are at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Some people are out of the country in Europe working in Dubai and different areas. So But the same rules apply in terms of handling, in terms of how you research objects, how you put up an exhibit, and it's how you educate folks. That's a big component of it. So you can learn all kinds of different skills that will dovetail and be available, in your museum career.
All right, final question comes in from Jackie. My great-grandfather gave me a ticket to the first baseball game he ever went to. How can I donate that item to the Hall of Fame, and would you like that ticket?
Well, certainly, we'd love to know more about it. Certainly, we'd love to know if it was a game where there was a specific event that happened. We would love to know certainly condition of the ticket as well. Those are all deciding factors. The date. So we look at everything about this particular ticket. Folks are welcome to contact us here at the Hall if they've got things that they want to donate. As I mentioned before, we have those committees that review all potential donations. So we would love to see even just an emailed image of the ticket would be wonderful. And then we can do the research from there and see if it is something that would fit into our ticket collection.
Sue, is there a good email address that people can send these inquiries to?
There is, and it's right on our website, actually. It's registrar@baseballhall.org. So there's actually a collections page that you can go to where you can find the web address. Or they're welcome to email me directly as well. smckay@baseballhall.org will work too. So, I have folks contacting me every day, and it's really a pleasure to speak with people and see what they have in their own collections. Sometimes folks just don't necessarily want to donate, but they just want to know how to store their pieces. They're concerned and they want these things to last. And so I'm happy to chat with people about the conservation and preservation of items, and also the donation of pieces too, because a lot of folks can't have those exact parameters in their own homes. And they have a great sense of peace knowing that when they donate something to the Hall, it will be here and it will be taken care of forever. And I've had generations of family come to visit. It's almost like a little reunion. Folks come to see what great granddad has donated, and we afford that courtesy to our donor families, and it's just a great event when that happens. So they can.
Email again is registrar@baseballhall.org. Hopefully I can spell registrar correctly.
Yeah, it's right on the website. So just go to our page, okay, and you'll see it there, and you can ask right through the website.
Great. Registrar@baseballhall.org, and again, our website, of course, is baseballhall.org. All that information is there. Sue, you've given us a lot of great information over these last 50 minutes or so. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
You are welcome. And, please write me, call me if you have questions, because I'm happy to help in any way I can.
Sue, we really appreciate it. Great job. Sue McKay, the Director of Collections here at the National Baseball Hall of Fame and Museum, joining us for the first in what we hope is a long series of programs, Ask the Expert. We thank everybody for being with us today. A beautiful day here in Cooperstown, and we hope you have a great day, everybody. Thanks.